The morning started,
Sir,
like every
look at
other at
this.
Seraphis Tower,
The cutoff
the
date is
82-floor
listed
glass
incorrectly here.
monument that
We still
pierced
have
the
until
city
midnight.
skyline and
God,
shimmered
you're
like a
right.
blade under the rising sun. People said the tower reflected its owner, sharp, flawless, impossible to ignore. And at the very top, behind reinforced glass and 10 layers of silence, sat Alexander Kane, billionaire, media-sculpted titan, feared negotiator, and the man whose entire empire was unknowingly scheduled to collapse at 10 a.m. But far below him, in the service quarters that smelled faintly of detergent and brass polish, Elaine Ward tied the last knot of her apron and stepped into the corridor. She moved with quiet precision, soft-stepped, observant, almost invisible in the controlled chaos of morning routines. Most employees barely registered her presence, but that never bothered her. Invisibility had a way of revealing things the world tried hard to hide. She began her rounds the same way she always did, by listening. Not intentionally, it was simply something she had learned to survive on. The shuffle of hurried footsteps, the tense murmurs leaking from half-open doors, the whirring of printers spitting out confidential papers, the building breathed secrets. And Elaine could hear the pattern shifts long before anyone else noticed them. Today, something felt off. The elevator lobby on the executive floor was unusually quiet. No rushed assistants, no clusters of board members rehearsing lines, not even the ever-present security guards chatting to fill their shift's boredom. Instead, there was a strong, almost metallic tension in the air, like the building itself was holding its breath. Elaine paused, glancing at the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a dizzying view of the awakening city. She brushed a streak of dust from the glass, though she had polished it perfectly the night before. It wasn't the dust that bothered her, it was the faint vibration in the floor beneath her shoes, like machinery warming up somewhere it shouldn't be. She told herself she was imagining it, and turned into the 81st floor conference wing. The first oddity awaited her there. A single document lay on the floor, face down, inches from the copy room door. Papers never stayed loose here. Alexander Kane demanded orders so strict it bordered on ritual. Elaine bent down, picked it up carefully, and froze when she caught the corner of a watermark: Kane Global Holdings, internal use only. The seal shimmered faintly under the lights. Not her business, she thought. Just return it to the copy room. But as she reached for the doorknob, she heard voices on the other side, hushed, urgent, and unmistakably angry. "If he signs it, it's over," a man hissed. "He will sign it," another replied. "He thinks it's a routine authorization. By the time he realizes what he's done, the board will have moved. They'll take everything." Elaine froze. "Yes, but what about the timestamp? It has to be at 10 sharp. If he delays..." "He won't. He never reads the fine print. That's the whole point." A soft laugh followed, but it wasn't amused, it was triumphant. Elaine's pulse thudded in her ears. She took a silent step back, gripping the document a little too tightly. She didn't fully understand what she had just overheard, but one thing was clear. Something deliberate, something planned, something dangerous was unfolding. She continued down the hallway, trying to shake the feeling crawling up her spine. Her job was to clean rooms, not understand the games of men in suits. Still, something gnawed at her. She entered the executive pantry, wiped the countertops, restocked the coffee pods, and straightened the immaculate glassware. Everything seemed normal, but her hands moved automatically while her mind replayed the voices, the tone, the chilling confidence. He never reads the fine print. She had seen Mr. Kane a few times, always moving with a predator's precision, always wearing silence like armor. He was rude, impatient, often dismissive. But he was fiercely protective of his company. People whispered he built it with blood under his nails. Would a man like that really sign something life-shattering without reading it? Elaine wasn't sure. Billionaires lived in a different world. High floors, high stakes, high risks. Maybe mistakes looked different up there. She finished her round and moved toward the corner suite, Mr. Kane's private office level. She wasn't supposed to clean it until later, but routine dictated she inspect the outer lounge in the morning. As she stepped inside, another oddity struck her. Mr. Kane's briefcase, the custom black one with titanium edges, sat on the couch. Open. He never left it open. Ever. Not after that one incident months ago, when an assistant accidentally peeked inside and was fired on the spot. Kane's briefcase was a fortress. People whispered it held documents no one else was allowed to touch. Elaine moved closer reluctantly. Files were spread inside neatly, but visibly, contracts, memos, sealed envelopes, and right on top, almost placed deliberately for attention, was a crisp folder labeled 10A, M, Final Authorization. She felt a chill trace her spine. It couldn't be a coincidence. Not after what she overheard. Her gaze drifted to the signature line visible through the translucent paper. Alexander Kane's name was already printed in bold. A prep for signing, a formality, a trap? Elaine exhaled slowly. She shouldn't even be looking at this. She wasn't supposed to be here yet. She reached to close the briefcase, thinking she could at least return the loose document she found. But as she lifted the lid, something else caught her eye: a small corner of blue paper, half hidden under the authorization form. Unlike the crisp corporate documents, this one was wrinkled, older, handwritten. Her breath hitched. She recognized the handwriting instantly. It belonged to someone she once knew, someone from a part of her life she never spoke about in this building. Someone who should have no connection to Alexander Kane or his billion-dollar crisis. Her fingers trembled as she slid the paper slightly upward to confirm. But before she could read a single word, a deep voice sliced through the silence. "What do you think you're doing in my office?" Elaine spun around. Alexander Kane stood in the doorway, cold, composed, and watching her with eyes that could ruin entire careers. The document was still in her hand. The briefcase still open. Her past staring back at her from inside it. Elaine has just been caught, and the handwritten paper in the billionaire's briefcase somehow belongs to her past. Alexander Kane's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It rolled through the office like cold iron, controlled, sharpened, dangerous. Elaine straightened abruptly, the authorization folder still half lifted from his briefcase. Her throat tightened, and her gaze dropped involuntarily to the handwritten paper beneath it. The familiar handwriting, the slanted strokes, the signature that had cast a shadow over her entire childhood. She forced the briefcase lid closed. I'm sorry, sir. The lounge wasn't cleaned last night. I thought I should." "That's a lie." He took 2 deliberate steps toward her. She flinched. She hated that she did, because men like him smelled fear the way wolves smelled blood. Kane's eyes were as unreadable as polished stone. "You never enter this office during morning hours, not without permission. Why now?" Elaine clasped her hands to steady them. "I'm only trying to keep my job." "By going through my private documents?" She opened her mouth, then shut it again. Anything she said would sound like guilt. Silence stretched sharp, suffocating. Kane's gaze flicked to the authorization folder, then to her trembling fingers. Something passed through his expression: annoyance, suspicion, maybe calculation, but before he could speak again, the office door cracked open. "Mr. Kane." His executive assistant, Lydia, poked her head inside. "The board is asking if you'll be joining the 10 a.m. review early. They said they have updates." Kane's jaw tensed, a muscle pulsed once at his temple. "I'll be down at 10, he said flatly. "Very well." Lydia shut the door softly. Elaine noticed 2 things. Lydia's eyes had barely glanced at her, as if she'd been instructed not to acknowledge people like Elaine. Kane hadn't denied the meeting was important. He hadn't shrugged it off. He looked irritated and uneasy. Kane returned his attention to Elaine, who clutched the loan document she had found earlier. "What is that?" he asked. "It was on the floor near the copy room," she said. "I picked it up to return it." "Give it to me." She handed it over. As he inspected it, his brows lowered. For a second, she saw confusion. Then the steel mask returned. "And what else did you touch?" "Nothing. I swear. I only." He cut her off with a raised hand. "Get out." Her pulse slammed against her ribs. She nodded quickly, murmured a faint apology, and moved toward the door. Just as she reached it, his voice came again, quiet, cold, probing. "Elaine Ward," he said, "you've worked here for almost a year." "Yes, sir." "You cleaned 5 floors. Yet today, you started on this one." A statement, not a question. Her breath caught, he had noticed. I'm sorry if that's a problem." "It's not a problem," he said. "It's interesting." She didn't know how to respond. His gaze lingered on her a beat too long, studying something, searching for something. Go. She slipped out before he changed his mind. The hallway outside felt like fresh air after drowning. Her knees were weak, her hands cold. She pressed her back against the wall and exhaled shakily. She should not have been in that office. She should not have seen that paper. She should not have heard those men in the copy room. But the worst part was the thought that had sunk its claws into her mind. Why did Alexander Kane have a handwritten page from her father? The man who abandoned her. The man who vanished into a world of debts and threats, leaving her and her mother to fend for themselves. The man whose name was never spoken in her home except as a warning. He had ties to criminals, to money launderers, to the kind of people who vanished behind metal doors in the back alleys of the city. Elaine had spent her whole life trying to forget him. So how was his paper inside a billionaire's locked briefcase? She took the service elevator down to the 60th floor, where a few early employees were setting up projectors and arranging chairs for the morning briefing. She forced herself to focus on wiping tables, straightening furniture, and resetting coffee stations. Routine steadied her breath. That was what she always relied on. But the image kept resurfacing. Her father's handwriting. Inside Kane's case. Under a document tied to a 10A.M. meeting the board was waiting for. A mistake. A coincidence. Impossible. Elaine moved silently through the room until her foot struck something small and metallic under a table. She crouched and picked it up. A cufflink. Silver, engraved with clean initials, A.K. Mr. Kane's. But he never came to this floor, ever. His presence here would have caused a ripple through the staff. So why was his cufflink lying under a back row chair? Elaine frowned. She scanned the chairs more carefully and spotted something else tucked between two seats, a crumpled sticky note. A single line was written on it. 10 means everything. Her pulse spiked. She looked around. The room was empty, silent, but she felt watched. Not by cameras. Not by eyes. By time. She pocketed the cufflink before she even realized she'd done it. Just then, soft footsteps approached behind her. Elaine stiffened. It was Harper, the only person in the tower who ever spoke to her kindly, a young intern with gentle eyes, a nervous laugh, and a tendency to spill coffee on his own shoes. He smiled sheepishly. "I didn't mean to startle you." "It's fine," she said, inhaling discreetly to calm her racing heart. Harper scratched the back of his neck. "You, okay? You look like you saw a ghost." Elaine hesitated. Harper was harmless, sweet, but if something dangerous was happening in this building, she couldn't involve him. "Yes, I'm fine," she lied. "Just tired." He nodded, accepting it too easily. "Makes sense. Big day today." Her stomach knotted. "Why?" "Oh," he blinked. "You don't know, everyone's talking about it. The board's been planning something major for months. They said today's 10 a.m. meeting is decisive." That word again. Decisive. Elaine steadied her breath. "Do you know what it's about?" Harper shook his head. "No idea, but everyone's nervous. Even the VP looked pale this morning." He started walking toward the projector cabinet, then paused, lowering his voice. "Elaine, listen. I heard something weird earlier." Her heart slowed. "What?" she whispered. He leaned in, eyes darting around. 2 men from the legal department were talking by the stairwell. One of them said, "By 11, Kane won't own his own shadow." Elaine's breath caught painfully. Harper didn't notice he was too focused on the projector cable in his hands. "I'm probably overthinking it," he added with a shrug. "Anyway, I should finish up. See you." He gave her a shy smile and walked off. Elaine stood frozen. By 11. Kane loses everything. And her father's handwriting is in the middle of it. Pieces were forming a shape she didn't want to see. She forced herself through the rest of her duties, but her mind churned with rising dread. At 9:42 a.m., as she walked past the 59th floor corridor on her way to the supply room, her phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. She stared at it. Her father's number had looked exactly like that, unknown, untraceable, always changing. The phone vibrated again. Against her better judgment, she answered. She didn't speak. A man's voice came through the line, low and grave. Elaine Ward, stop digging. Her blood went cold. She couldn't breathe. Who is this? She whispered. You're already too close, the voice said. Walk away. If you care about your life, walk away. The line went dead. Elaine's hand trembled violently. She lowered the phone slowly, trying to steady her breath, but the hallway seemed to tilt around her. At the far end of the corridor, a shadow shifted. A man stood there, half hidden, watching her. She blinked. But he vanished around the corner. Her pulse thundered. A mysterious stranger has warned Elaine to stop, and she's now being watched. Elaine stood frozen in the corridor, the phone still trembling in her hand, the stranger's warning echoing in her skull like a pulse she couldn't silence. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to disappear back into the safety of anonymity. But something stronger held her in place, a quiet, stubborn thread of defiance woven into her bones long before this building, long before Kane, long before the life she had built out of fractured pieces. Her father's handwriting in the briefcase. The overheard plot in the copy room. The 10 a.m. deadline. A stranger who somehow knew her name and had her number. These weren't coincidences. They were coordinates, pointing her toward a truth she wasn't meant to see. And yet, someone was watching. She forced her legs to move, walking briskly down the hallway without looking back. She wouldn't give whoever was following her the satisfaction of seeing fear. She ducked into the supply room, shut the door, and leaned against it, breath short and uneven. The room was small, lined with shelves of towels, disinfectants, and neatly stacked boxes. Safe. Ordinary. Grounding. She exhaled and tried to think clearly. Her father had once said something she hated remembering. Powerful men only look invincible because they hide their broken pieces better than the rest of us. She had been 11. He had been drunk. But suddenly, in the middle of Seraphis Tower, that sentence felt like a map. Was Kane one of those men? Was he broken underneath the armor? Was her father's shadow somehow wrapped around this billionaire's downfall? Elaine rubbed her forehead. She needed logic, not emotion. The 10 a.m. meeting was minutes away. Whatever was going to happen, it would happen with or without her understanding. But the stranger's warning wasn't about Kane, it was about her. Someone believed she was digging. Someone thought she knew more than she did. That meant one thing. Elaine had walked into the center of a weaponized secret. She opened the supply cabinet to grab her cleaning cart. Routine steadied her and froze. Her cart had been moved. She never left it crooked, ever. And now, tucked in the top tray between two neatly folded microfiber cloths, was a white envelope. No name, no markings, just placed there, waiting. Elaine swallowed hard, shut the door behind her, and gently opened the envelope. Inside were two things. A single USB drive. And a note, handwritten but not by her father. You're cleaning the wrong rooms. If you want the truth, check the 47th floor. Before 10. Her heart slammed. 47th floor? That level was unused, a storage and renovation zone, long empty after a project stalled. No employees worked there, no meetings, no cameras except for the elevator lobby. Someone wanted her to go there. Someone who knew she found that first paper. Someone inside the tower. She moved to the hallway, pushing her cart as casually as she could, though her palms were slick with sweat. Her eyes scanned every corner, every movement, every shadow. At the service elevator, she swiped her access fob and entered, forcing herself to breathe as the doors slid shut. 9:51 a.m. 9 minutes until the meeting. 9 minutes until everything changed. 9 minutes until she stepped into whatever trap or truth waited on the 47th floor. The elevator descended quietly, too quietly. When the doors opened, the hallway was dim, lights flickering in patches, drywall exposed along the sides. Dust coated the air, softening the edges of everything. Empty. Silent. Forgotten. Elaine stepped out, the wheels of her cart squeaking faintly. She looked left, then right. Nothing. Then, from the far end of the hallway, she heard a faint sound, not a footstep exactly, more like something being dragged or shifted. She moved closer. The 47th floor had once been designated for a new research division Kane planned to launch, but according to staff gossip, the project died before it began. Rumors swirled, disagreements, budget cuts, sabotage. Sabotage. That word sliced too easily into the morning's events. As she turned the corner, she stopped short. The door to a conference room stood slightly ajar. Inside, the lights were off, but a soft glow pulsed faintly from within a screen, maybe, or a small device. Her breath tightened. She pushed the door open slowly. The room was empty, except for a single laptop sitting on the long-abandoned conference table, its screen flickering with an image. No lock screen. No password. As if it had been waiting for her. She approached cautiously. On the screen was a paused security feed time-stamped 2 weeks ago, from a camera angle she recognized as Mr. Kane's private office. Elaine's stomach clenched. She hit play. Kane appeared on the screen, pacing aggressively, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was muffled, but his posture was pure fury, shoulders hunched, jaw tight, movements sharp. Then he slammed the phone down, opened his briefcase in a frantic motion, and pulled out a stack of documents. Among them, the same final authorization folder he had today. He stared at it like it was poison. Then, in a moment that made Elaine's skin prickle, Kane grabbed the handwritten note, her father's note, and hurled it against the wall. She froze. Why would a billionaire have a note written by a disgraced man who abandoned his daughter? Why would he be furious enough to throw it? Before Elaine could process it, the video continued. Kane sat down heavily, buried his face in his hands, and whispered something the camera barely caught. I can't let them use her. Not like this. Her blood ran cold. Her. If. He meant someone specific. He meant someone connected to the note. He meant. Elaine's hand flew to her mouth as the realization struck. He meant her. Not metaphorically. Not accidentally. He knew who she was. Her father. Her connection. Her presence in this building. He knew. The screen flickered, and a new video popped open automatically, a second clip, this one from this morning. Elaine leaned closer. 2 men entered an office she didn't recognize. She saw their faces, clearly the same voices she had heard in the copy room earlier. He'll sign it at 10, one said. And once he does, the board moves, the other replied. Then one man said something that made Elaine's breath stop. If the maid saw anything, remove her, quietly. The other man nodded. Before noon. She can't be tied to him again. Again. The word hit harder than any threat. Her father. Kane. The note. The surveillance. Her being followed. Something bound them all together, something hidden, something dangerous enough that powerful men wanted her gone. Elaine stepped back, pulse hammering. Behind her, the floor creaked. She spun. A silhouette stood in the doorway. Tall. Still. Watching. Not a shadow this time. Not a stranger passing by. A man in a suit. Security badge. Expression unreadable. Miss Ward, he said quietly. You need to come with me. Her heart lurched. For what? His hand moved to his earpiece, voice clipped. Target located. Elaine's stomach dropped. He stepped closer. Too close. Don't make this difficult, he said. We have orders. Elaine backed away, pulse roaring. The man reached for her arm. And suddenly, someone grabbed her from behind, pulled her sharply out of the room, and whispered with urgent breath. Run. Elaine is pulled away by an unknown rescuer just as security moves to seize her, and the truth that she's tied to Kane is far darker than she imagined. Elaine's breath steadied as she followed the ringing chime deeper into the mansion's east wing, where most servants rarely stepped unless summoned. The marble transitioned into dark oak flooring, polished to a cold sheen that reflected candlelight from the wall sconces. These halls were older than the rest of the house. Kane rarely came here, and the prostistem, and even the head butler referred to this area as the preserved wing. The chime rang again. Not an alarm. Not the usual call bell. Something older. Elaine pushed forward, gripping the cleaning cloth in her hand the way a child might hold a talisman. She turned a corner and stepped into a long, vaulted gallery lined with portraits, faces frozen in paint, shoulders squared in aristocratic posing, each bearing the unmistakable surname Blackwell. Kane's ancestors. The dynasty he belonged to. The dynasty rumored to have roots in politics, finance, and disappearances woven like threads behind the curtain of power. But Elaine's attention wasn't on the stern faces glaring down from the walls. Her eyes locked onto the object at the far end of the gallery. A tall grandfather clock encased in mahogany, its pendulum swinging slowly. It shouldn't have been ticking. It had been silent for decades. Elaine approached the clock, her pulse climbing. The ticking was too deliberate, too precise, as if someone had recently wound it. And then she saw the thin crack along the frame's right edge, barely visible unless someone was standing inches away. She shifted the cloth to her other hand and pressed lightly. The wood responded with a soft click. A hidden hinge. The clock door swung open by itself. A thin corridor lay behind it, narrow and steep, descending into darkness. The cold air that drifted up smelled of old stone and something faintly metallic, like rust or blood. Elaine hesitated. But then she heard another sound. A low whirring, mechanical yet rhythmic. Her father once built hidden chambers for wealthy clients. She had childhood memories of blueprint papers scattered across their dining table, his rough hands guiding hers as he explained mechanisms and escape routes. He always whispered, "Every powerful home has secrets, Ellie. And if you ever hear machinery where there shouldn't be any, walk away." She didn't walk away. Not tonight. Not after Kane Blackwell recognized her father's handwriting. She slipped into the hidden passage, let the clock door close behind her, and began descending the cold steps. Her fingers glided along the stone wall, counting each turn. The whirring grew clearer until she reached the bottom, where the staircase opened into a dim chamber lit by a single flickering bulb. It wasn't a dungeon. It wasn't a wine cellar. It was something far stranger. The room was circular, with steel racks lining the walls filled with files, hundreds of them, each labeled with dates. The earliest went back to the 1950 seconds. The latest were from last month. Elaine stepped closer. Most files bore one simple title on their spines. Project Legacy. The same phrase whispered in rumors about billionaire families' projects that influenced elections, buried scandals, even steered global markets. Her father had warned her of these things, using vague terms, telling her not to ask questions about the jobs he took when she was a child. Elaine's throat tightened. Had he built this? Had he been part of whatever legacy was? She spotted a metal table in the center of the chamber, a clean workspace, disturbingly clinical. On it lay a thick black ledger, its cover stamped with the Blackwell crest, a serpent coiled around a key. Against her better judgment, she opened it. Page after page revealed names, dates, locations, every client, alliance, cover-up, and asset the Blackwell empire had ever used. Every person tied to them, legally or illegally, was documented here. And then she reached a familiar name. Her hands went cold. Benjamin Hart. Her father. Next to it, architect consultant, confidential, entrusted with secure infrastructure, status, compromised. Action, to be executed, signed by K. Blackwell. Elaine's breathing fractured. Executed? Compromised? Her father wasn't dead from an accident. Someone had marked him for removal. She turned the page. A letter was tucked inside, sealed with wax. The symbol pressed into the wax was the same serpent and key crest. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal and unfolded the document. It was her father's handwriting. Recognizable. Shaking. Written shortly before he died. If you are reading this, Elaine, it means they have found me. I tried to protect you. I tried to disappear. But legacy does not forgive betrayers. Kane is not your enemy, he is the only one who doubted the order. Trust no one else. If I do not survive, find the second ledger. It contains the truth they fear. The truth they fear. A second ledger. More secrets. Elaine barely had time to process the message before a loud click echoed behind her. She froze. The staircase she had used to enter sealed shut with a heavy mechanical thud. Her heart dropped. She backed away from the table, her hand searching blindly for something she could use as a weapon, anything. But then she heard footsteps. Slow. Confident. Descending from a second entrance, she hadn't noticed a metal door sliding open behind a rack of files. A tall silhouette emerged, framed by the dim light. Broad shoulders. Sharp posture. Cold aura. Kane Blackwell stepped into the chamber. His eyes were unreadable as they locked onto her, traveling from the open ledger to the broken wax seal to her trembling hands. He looked less surprised that she was there, and more like he had been expecting her. Kane. Elaine whispered, stepping back. This room, my father, why is his name, why would you sign an order? He raised a finger, silencing her instantly. His voice was a low, controlled murmur that felt both threatening and restrained. Elaine, you shouldn't be here. Her pulse hammered. Tell me the truth. Did you kill my father? Silence. A silence so sharp it felt like it cut the air between them. And then Kane took one step toward her. And his next words shattered the ground beneath her feet. No, but I know who did. Before Elaine could react, the lights flickered violently, and pitch-black darkness swallowed the chamber. The darkness fell like a collapsing ceiling, instant, smothering, absolute. Elaine's breath stuttered in her chest as the chamber drowned in black. The bulb above them must have been deliberately cut. The silence that followed wasn't accidental. It was too clean, too timed. She pressed her back against the cold metal racks, fingers trembling against the file edges. Somewhere in the dark, Kane exhaled steady, unpanicked, almost practiced. Elaine, he said quietly, his voice echoing against stone. Don't move. But she couldn't obey. Being blind in this buried vault, trapped with a man who might have orchestrated her father's death or might be her only ally, was a torture she couldn't submit to. Her hand found a metal rod lying near the ledger table. It felt like part of the binding mechanism for the shelves. She tightened her grip around it. Kane, she whispered, stay where you are. A beat of silence. Then a soft, humorless sound. Even now, you think I'm the one to fear. A faint scrape echoed his shoes shifting against concrete. Don't come closer, Elaine warned, raising the rod blindly. You misunderstand, Kane murmured. I'm trying to. A sharp clang sliced through the chamber, metal hitting stone somewhere near the second entrance. Kane moved instantly. The sound was enough to displace the air in the room. She sensed him shift, stepping away from her. That wasn't him. Someone else was inside the chamber. Every hair on Elaine's arms rose. Kane's voice hardened. Show yourself. But whoever had entered didn't respond. There were only faint movements, whispers of cloth brushing steel, a subtle exhale, the slightest disturbance of the air, like someone skilled in disappearing even while being present. Elaine's chest tightened. This wasn't a thief. This wasn't a random intruder. This was someone who knew the legacy vault. The metal latch snapped open on the far side of the chamber, a file drawer being pulled. Kane hissed under his breath. They're after the ledger. Elaine, move now. She stumbled sideways, feeling her way along the racks until her fingers brushed the central table. The ledger was still open, her father's final letter lying exposed. She didn't dare reach for it. The intruder was too close, too silent. A sudden metallic slice cut through the darkness. A knife? A wire? Elaine ducked instinctively, feeling the air rip above her head. Kane's voice boomed from the other side of the room. Elaine, get down. A heavy thud followed, two bodies colliding. The scuffle erupted violently, echoing off the stone walls. She heard fists striking, the grunt of impact, the scrape of boots on concrete. Kane wasn't fighting like a businessman. He was fighting like someone trained. Someone used to close-quarters combat. Every slam of his movements had precision. Every exhale was controlled. A truth Elaine had long suspected but never confirmed twisted inside her chest. Kane Blackwell wasn't merely wealthy. He was dangerous. A second sharp sound rang out, followed by a muffled curse that definitely wasn't Kane's. The intruder stumbled back. Elaine heard the rustle of clothing, someone grabbing something, running fingers through files, searching desperately. For what? For the ledger? For her father's letter? For proof Kane had tried to hide? A violent shove echoed, and the intruder crashed into the metal racks. Files spilled everywhere, slapping the floor like dropped secrets. "Elaine," Kane called out, "find the switch on the wall, left side, shoulder height." She sprinted toward the direction of his voice, hands sweeping the stone wall. Her fingertips grazed a metal plate. She pressed it desperately. Nothing. "It won't work," she cried. "They cut the power," Kane growled. "Find the backup lever just above it. Pull hard." Elaine reached upward until her hand struck a small metal bar. She yanked it with all her strength. A low hum surged beneath the floor. Then, the chamber burst into dim, emergency red lighting. The room changed instantly. Everything washed in blood-colored illumination. Shadows sharpened into silhouettes. And she finally saw the intruder. A man dressed in black tactical fabric, face hidden behind a half-mask, hands gripping a thin steel garrote wire. One end was already hooked around Kane's arm, the other twisted viciously toward Kane's neck. Elaine gasped. The intruder snapped his head toward her, the mask's eye slits narrowing. Kane took advantage of the moment. He slammed his elbow back, knocking the man's grip loose. The wire slipped, slicing a shallow line across Kane's shoulder. Blood soaked through his shirt almost instantly. The masked man lunged for the ledger. Kane lunged for him. Elaine lunged for neither. Her instincts pulled her toward the fallen files. One folder lay open, its contents scattered like puzzle pieces. On top was a photograph. Her father. Older than she remembered him. Standing beside Kane. Both serious. Both looking directly at the camera. There was no hatred in their expressions. No fear. No tension. They looked like allies. Elaine's mind spun. Kane had said he wasn't her father's enemy. The letter had hinted at the same, but if Kane wasn't the one who ordered her father's death, then who had signed that execution line? Another slam jolted her. The intruder struck Kane across the jaw with a force that cracked like bone meeting metal. Kane staggered but didn't fall. He moved forward with a grim, terrifying focus. The intruder realized he'd lost the advantage. He grabbed a smoke canister from his belt and slammed it against the floor. Dark gray vapor roared upward, swallowing visibility even under the red lights. "Elaine," Kane shouted. She coughed violently, dropping to her knees as the smoke thickened. She reached for the ground, trying to orient herself. A hand seized her wrist. Cold. Gloved. Not Kane's. The intruder crouched beside her, his masked face inches from hers. His voice was low, distorted through a modulator. "Don't trust him, your father didn't." Elaine's pulse shattered. "Who are you?" The masked man leaned closer. "I was the last person to see Benjamin Hart alive." Before she could react, he hurled a small metallic device toward the control panel. It sparked once, and the emergency lights exploded in a burst of darkness. The chamber went black again. Elaine felt the intruder release her wrist. Footsteps sprinted toward the alternate exit. A door slammed open. Kane roared her name, and the ground beneath her feet began to shake. A rumbling started behind the walls. A collapse mechanism. The vault had been triggered to seal, or bury everything inside. And Elaine was still trapped in the dark. The earth shuddered as if something enormous had rolled beneath it. Dust rained from the ceiling, the metal racks trembled. A deep grinding roar echoed through the sublevels, shaking the chamber with the unmistakable growl of a lockdown system from an era when secrets were protected with steel, not signatures. Elaine staggered in the darkness, coughing from the smoke that still clung to the air like a choking fog. "Kane," she shouted. "Where are you?" A hand brushed her arm, firm, urgent. "I'm here," Kane said, his voice low, roughened from the fight. "Stay low, the vault is sealing." He grabbed her elbow and pulled her toward him, shielding her as another violent tremor rattled the floor. In the absolute darkness, his body felt like the only solid thing in a world shaking apart. The intruder triggered the failsafe, Kane muttered. "This place was built to bury evidence, not protect it. If we don't get out..." The sentence didn't need finishing. Another rumble surged through the chamber, louder and closer. Stone scraped against metal, hinges groaned under pressure. Somewhere near the ceiling, massive plates were sliding into place, slow, unstoppable. Elaine pushed away from Kane just enough to steady herself. "We have to find the exit he used," she gasped. "Hurry." Kane guided her with a hand between her shoulder blades, urgency overriding every other emotion. They moved across the chamber, blind, feeling their way through smoke and darkness. Elaine's fingers brushed stone, then metal. A doorframe. "Here, this is it," she breathed. Kane reached forward and pulled. The door didn't budge. The intruder had sealed it from the outside. Kane swore under his breath, a raw, unrestrained sound she had never heard from him before. "He locked us in." Another quake rattled the chamber, stronger than the last. A metallic shriek split the air as part of the ceiling cracked open, spraying concrete dust like ash. Elaine threw an arm over her face. Kane covered her with his body again, pushing her toward a corner where the shaking felt slightly less violent. "Don't stand under the upper crossbeams," Kane warned. "They'll go first." "How do you know that?" "Because I renovated this place," he said through clenched teeth. "You what?" But before she could question him, another section of ceiling gave way. A chunk of concrete slammed into the floor where she'd been standing seconds earlier. The impact vibrated through her bones. Kane grabbed her hand. "We need light." He yanked something from his pocket, a small, palm-sized emergency beacon. A pin tore free. A moment later, a dim, bluish glow flared into existence, barely cutting through the haze but enough to reveal the general shape of the chamber. Elaine could finally see him. Blood streaked his cheek. Smoke darkened his shirt. The cut on his shoulder had soaked the fabric in a spreading stain. And yet his eyes, sharp, steady, unblinking, were locked on survival. "We're not dying here," he said. She followed him to the metal racks near the back wall. Kane shoved aside boxes. Files, ledgers, papers fluttering like wounded birds. He reached a reinforced panel and pressed his palm against it, feeling for something. "There's a maintenance hatch," he said, "a narrow crawl space that leads to the old drainage tunnels. It was never on the map." "Why didn't the intruder use it?" Elaine asked. Kane's jaw tightened. "Because he wanted us dead with the evidence." He found a small latch hidden beneath a rusted pipe. He pressed hard, the panel popped open an inch. Kane froze. Inside, the maintenance hatch, was emptiness, fresh emptiness. Steel cut, bolts ripped out. Someone had sabotaged the escape tunnel from the other side. "Kane," Elaine whispered, dread curling in her stomach. This was deliberate. He stepped back, chest rising and falling with restrained fury. They knew every inch of this vault. They knew the exits, the weak points, the trigger points. This wasn't random. Elaine shook her head. "No, this can't be coincidence. This is tied to my father. It has to be." Kane turned toward her. His expression shifted, softened, in a way she didn't expect. "Elaine, your father didn't just work for my company. He was my mentor. He taught me more about integrity than anyone I've ever known." Her heart clenched painfully. "Then why didn't you tell me? Why did you lie about barely knowing him?" Kane's eyes dropped for a moment, the first time she'd ever seen him avoid her gaze. "I didn't want you caught in the crossfire," he said quietly. "Your father asked me not to tell you. He made me promise to keep you away from this world." "What world?" "The one that killed him." Elaine's breath caught. The room trembled again. Dust rained from overhead. A beam groaned, bending under pressure. "Kane," she whispered, "what really happened to him?" He hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. The truth was not simple. Not clean. Not something he could throw into the air while the chamber threatened to crush them. "He found something inside the corporation," Kane said finally. "Something he wasn't supposed to know. Something someone at the top wanted buried." Elaine shook her head violently. "That doesn't answer the question. Did they kill him?" Kane stepped closer, not threatening, not evasive, but unbearably honest. "I don't know," he said softly. "But I think he knew he wouldn't survive what he uncovered." Elaine stared at him. A hollow ache bloomed in her chest. "My father wasn't reckless." "No," Kane agreed. "He was brave. Too brave." Another explosion of stone shattered the moment as a massive ceiling beam split, crashing between them. Kane grabbed her arm and yanked her out of the falling debris, both of them stumbling back into the only safe corner left. Elaine's heart thundered. We're running out of time. Kane turned to the vault door, the massive steel entrance that had sealed the moment the intruder escaped. No way, Elaine breathed. We're going through, Kane said. It weighs a ton. There's a manual override bolt. We force it open halfway, slip under, and run. He didn't wait for her agreement. He took her hand and sprinted toward the main door. The beacon flickered. Smoke curled around them in choking spirals. The grinding of metal overhead grew louder, nearly deafening. Kane reached the door and dropped to one knee, yanking off a small access panel. He jammed a steel rod taken from the racks into the manual release gear. On my count, he said. 3, 2, 1 push. Together, they heaved. The rod groaned. The gear resisted. Kane's muscles strained visibly beneath the dim blue glow. The door budged. An inch. Another. Again, Kane shouted. Elaine pushed with everything she had. Her back burned. Her arms shook. The door rose just enough for air-cold, dust-free air to rush in from the hallway outside. We can fit, Kane said, breathless. Elaine, you go first. No, she snapped. We go together. He didn't argue. Not this time. They crouched. They prepared to slide beneath the door. Then, a shadow moved outside. A silhouette. Someone standing just beyond the threshold. Elaine froze. Kane stiffened. And then, a low voice, deep, familiar, impossible, slipped through the crack. Elaine? Is that you? Her blood turned to ice. She knew that voice. She knew it down to her bones. It was her father's. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. Not the shaking ceiling. Not the grinding steel. Not the roaring collapse behind them. Just that voice. That impossible, familiar voice flowing through the thin crack beneath the vault door like a memory that had grown teeth. Elaine's chest tightened so violently she couldn't breathe. Dad, she whispered, her voice barely a thread. Kane's eyes widened, every muscle in his body pulled taut. He didn't look shocked. He looked horrified. Another tremor ripped through the chamber, but Elaine barely registered it. She crawled closer to the opening, desperate, trembling. Dad, is that really? Elaine, move back, Kane barked, grabbing her arm. She yanked free. Let go of me. That's my father. Kane didn't hesitate. He seized both her shoulders, forcing her to face him, his expression fierce and stripped raw. Listen to me, he said through gritted teeth. That cannot be Benjamin Hart. The voice outside came again, this time quieter, tinged with fear. Elaine. Please. I don't have much time. Elaine's heart splintered. It was him. She knew the cadence, the softness, the faint rasp at the end of his words. Her father had always sounded like he was carrying the weight of something important. Tears burned her eyes. He's alive, she whispered. All this time, they lied, you lied. Kane's jaw clenched. I never lied about his death, he said harshly. I saw his body. I buried him. Elaine froze. What? I held the casket, Kane said, voice shaking with a memory he clearly didn't want to revisit. I saw the autopsy report myself. Whatever is speaking out there, it isn't him. Her stomach twisted violently. But the voice came again, cracked and desperate. Elaine, sweetheart, please hurry. It was too real. Too specific. Too him. Another section of the ceiling groaned ominously. More dust rained down. The vault door strained, the metal vibrating beneath the pressure of the building collapsing inward. We have seconds, Kane said. We get out or we die here. Elaine shook her head fiercely. No, I'm not leaving until. A hand slipped under the gap. Pale. Thin. Shaking. A wedding ring gleaming on the middle finger. Her father's wedding ring. Elaine gasped so hard it hurt. She reached out, fingertips trembling. But Kane caught her wrist before she could touch it. Stop. Kane, that's him. That ring was buried with your father. Elaine froze. The words hit her like a physical strike. What are you saying? I oversaw the funeral, Kane said, voice low and tense. His ring was on his hand when they closed the casket. I watched the lid lock. I watched the dirt cover it. Elaine felt the world tilt under her. The hand outside twitched. Stretched further. Reaching for her. Elaine, please, don't be afraid of me, the voice pleaded. Kane grabbed the rod they'd used to pry the door open and slammed it down hard, forcing the door to rise another inch. Just enough for a silhouette to appear in the narrow gap. Elaine's blood iced over. A shadow of a man. Slivers of gray hair. A familiar jawline. Her father's face. But wrong. Off-kilter. Eyes too reflective, like glass catching light. A trick of the dim hallway? Or something far more monstrous? Elaine shivered. Dad? The figure lifted its chin slowly. Let me help you, he whispered. I've been waiting so long for this moment. Kane's breath hissed through his teeth. That's not your father. That's a disguise, a projection, or... He cut himself off. But Elaine heard the unspoken word anyway. Or a deception built from surveillance and knowledge no one should have. Her father had predicted dangers. Her father had whispered warnings. Her father had died because he uncovered something huge. If someone wanted to control her, manipulate her, break her, what better weapon than the one man whose loss had shaped her entire life? The figure outside pressed closer, only an inch of metal separating him from her. Elaine, he said softly, your life is in danger because of Kane. He's the one who betrayed me. He's the one who... Kane slammed the rod again so hard the steel door screeched upward another inch. Enough to reveal more of the face. And Elaine's heart cracked. Because now she saw what Kane had sensed. The skin was too smooth. The contours too perfect. Like stretched silicone. A mask. A human mask. When the figure spoke again, the voice glitch cracked briefly deep, distorted before returning to the familiar tone. Elaine, don't listen to him. I'm your father. Her stomach plummeted. A cold, suffocating dread ran through her bloodstream. Someone had studied her. Studied him. Studied her trauma. And weaponized it. Before she could speak, a thunderous crack echoed above them. The ceiling split. A massive slab of stone dropped. Kane shoved Elaine aside. And the door buckled under the impact, nearly slamming shut again. They had seconds left. Maybe less. Kane's voice cut through the chaos, furious, breathless, strained. Elaine, look at me, look at me. She did. You and I are getting out alive, he said. And then I'm telling you everything I know about your father's last days. But right now you have to choose, me or that thing. The figure outside whispered her name again. This time in a perfect imitation of her father's bedtime voice, the one he used only when she was scared. Elaine, honey, come to daddy. Her throat closed. Her lungs burned. Her soul trembled. Kane shoved the gap open with a roar of effort. The door lifted just enough for a human body to slide under. He pointed at the opening. Go. Elaine hesitated. Just for a heartbeat. Caught between grief and survival. Past and present. Love and manipulation. Then she dove. Kane dove right behind her. But the figure was faster. As she slid under the door, the masked man lunged downward, grabbing her ankle with ice-cold fingers. Elaine screamed. Elaine tumbled forward, dragging herself along the narrow gap beneath the vault door. Dust and smoke clawed at her lungs. Her fingers scraped against concrete, metal edges, anything to gain purchase. Kane's hand slammed against her back, pushing her faster. Together they slid into the faintly lit hallway beyond, gasping, coughing, and drenched in sweat and fear. The masked figure shrieked behind them, but the metal door had slammed enough to slow him. Elaine didn't look back. Survival was sharper than curiosity now. Every nerve in her body screamed, move, move, move. Once clear, Kane dragged her into a side corridor, pressing her into the shadows. His chest rose and fell violently as he caught his breath. Are you hurt? She asked, voice rasping. I'll live, Kane said, His shoulder bled through the cut from the intruder's wire. You? Elaine grabbed Kane's arm, shaking him. We need to move. They're coming. Kane nodded, urgency replacing hesitation. Together, they navigated the service hallways, heading for a concealed exit her mother had pointed out in the building's blueprints years ago. But every turn brought them closer to discovery. Her mother followed silently, a shadowed guide with motives half known, half unknown. Elaine's mind raced. Who could she trust? Could Kane truly be loyal? Could her mother be honest, or was this another layer of deception? As they reached the final stairwell, Elaine glimpsed the masked figure at the end of the hall. Not alone, a second silhouette emerged, taller, broader, unmistakably human. The moment froze her blood. Kane whispered, "That's him. The real villain. The one who killed your father, the one behind Legacy, the one who has been manipulating us all." Elaine's stomach turned to ice. She didn't have to see the face to know it. The voice, the presence, the familiarity. Her mother's hand rested lightly on Elaine's shoulder. "You have to face him. Tonight, there's no escaping this." Elaine swallowed, her hands shook around the ledger. Every revelation, every betrayal, every death, they all led here. The walls of her world had crumbled. And in the shadowed stairwell, she knew one truth above all. The person she had trusted the most, family, love, mentor, was the one orchestrating everything. And they were about to step into the same light. The real villain emerges from the shadows, and Elaine recognizes them instantly, not just as someone close, but as the person whose betrayal has fueled every danger, every loss, and every secret she's uncovered. Elaine froze. The figure emerging from the shadows was unmistakable. The face, the posture, the subtle confidence, it was someone she had trusted implicitly, someone whose smile had comforted her, whose advice had guided her. Her uncle Robert Hart, her father's brother. The man who had posed as a mentor, a pillar of the family, was the architect of every death, every deception, every layer of manipulation that had consumed her life. Kane. Elaine's voice was barely a whisper, trembling with disbelief. "It's him." Kane's expression hardened. He had expected the moment, but seeing it unfold never softened the blow. "I warned you," he said, voice low. "He's always been closer than anyone realized, and he's clever, ruthless, patient." Robert stepped forward, a faint, calculating smile curling his lips. "Patience, yes. I had to wait for the right moment. Your father's curiosity was commendable, but fatal. And now, my dear niece, you've grown stronger, smarter than he ever imagined, a perfect instrument for what comes next." Elaine gritted her teeth. "You killed him. You killed my father." Robert's eyes flickered, but only for a moment. "I didn't kill him, I stopped him. Legacy demanded compliance. He was too dangerous to allow freedom. And when he discovered what I had orchestrated, well, let's say I ensured he would no longer interfere." Elaine's hands clenched around the ledger, the weight of her father's final truths grounding her. "You lied. You manipulated everything. The vault, the intruder, the staged threats, everything was for you to control the ledger, to control the company, to control me." Robert chuckled softly, almost kindly. "Control is an illusion. Influence, that is real power. And I've always been influential. You will see, Elaine. Soon, you'll understand that everything I did was for the continuation of the Hart legacy." Her chest tightened, every breath felt heavy with grief, betrayal, and rage. "No, my father fought for truth. He believed in exposing lies, and I'm going to finish what he started. You won't control me. You won't control Legacy." Robert's smile widened. "Ah, Spirit, that is what I hoped for. You're his daughter after all. But spirit alone doesn't win battles, Elaine. Choices matter, sacrifices matter. And sometimes, the only way to protect the future is to destroy the present." Kane stepped forward, the cut on his shoulder bleeding through his shirt, but his eyes unwavering. "Elaine isn't alone in this. We stop him, or he destroys more than just you. He destroys everything your father built." Elaine's gaze met Kane's. Trust didn't come easily anymore, but in that instant, she had no choice. Together, they had survived the vault collapse, the intruder, the deceptions. Together, they could confront Robert Hart. "Enough talk," Elaine said, voice cold. "Step aside, Kane. I'll face him." Robert's smile faded, replaced with a flicker of surprise and something darker. "Very well, Elaine. Face me, then. But remember, family binds us in ways you'll regret." Elaine's heart pounded. She stepped forward, holding the ledger tight against her chest. Every step was deliberate, every nerve screaming with anger and fear. The corridor seemed to shrink around them, the shadows deepening as though the building itself was holding its breath. "Tell me," she demanded, "why the ledger? Why all the secrets? Why manipulate me like a pawn?" Robert's expression softened ever so slightly. "The ledger is not just documents. It is power. Knowledge. Legacy. Your father sought truth, yes, but truth is dangerous. People misuse it. The wrong hands can unravel everything we've built. I merely preserved the line, protected the empire, and ensured the heart name endured." Elaine shook her head. "At what cost, my father? Innocent lives, my entire life manipulated." Robert's eyes hardened. "Sacrifice is the price of preservation. You'll understand soon enough, and you will be the one to carry this forward, if you're willing." The words cut Elaine like steel. This wasn't just revenge, it was moral judgment, a challenge, a test of her courage and conviction. She looked at Kane. His nod was almost imperceptible, but enough. He had survived deception, betrayal, and violence. Now it was Elaine's turn to act. Robert raised a hand slowly. "Choices must be made. Will you join me, or defy me? Will you preserve legacy, or destroy it? Choose wisely. One wrong move and—" A violent crash interrupted him. The masked intruder from the vault, his accomplices now revealed as more agents loyal to Robert, had breached the corridor behind them. Kane's eyes narrowed. "They didn't wait," Kane muttered. Elaine realized they were surrounded. The ledger pulsed in her hands like a living thing, the weight of truth and consequence settling deep in her chest. She had survived so far by instinct, courage, and wit, but now, the confrontation was unavoidable. Every secret, every lie, every betrayal, led to this corridor, this moment, this reckoning. Robert stepped closer, his face calm, almost intimate. "I hoped it wouldn't come to this, but I admire your resolve. It is admirable. Dangerous, but admirable." Elaine tightened her grip on the ledger. "You underestimated me. That's your mistake." A shadow flickered from the stairwell behind Robert, another agent, another threat, but Kane moved before anyone could act. With precise, brutal efficiency, he intercepted, sending the attacker sprawling across the concrete. Elaine didn't look away. She held her ground. Robert's lips curled into a thin, approving smile. "Very well, show me, Elaine. Show me the spirit your father left in you." Elaine's mind raced. Every echo of her father's teachings, every warning from Kane, every subtle clue she'd pieced together over weeks of danger all converged. She realized the ledger itself wasn't just evidence, it was a weapon. With a decisive step forward, she raised the ledger between them, as both shield and statement. "This ends tonight. You either answer for your betrayals, or the ledger does the talking." Robert's face remained unreadable, but the tiniest flicker in his eyes betrayed tension. The corridor became a charged arena, truth and deception, loyalty and betrayal, life and death, all colliding in the narrow space. Elaine's pulse roared in her ears as adrenaline surged, sharpening her senses, heightening every sound. The drip of water from a cracked pipe, the soft shuffle of feet, the labored breathing of Kane behind her. Then, the unthinkable happened. From the shadows behind Robert, someone moved, another figure stepping into the red emergency lights. Elaine froze. Kane's hand went to her arm. "Who?" The figure stepped forward slowly, deliberately, and the light caught their face. Elaine's blood ran cold. It was someone she had trusted more than anyone, someone whose loyalty she believed unshakable, someone whose revelation would not just unmask Robert, but change the entire meaning of every choice she had made. The words escaped her lips before she could stop them. "No, it can't be." Elaine's chest heaved as the figure stepped fully into the light. Her mind tried to process the impossibility. The person she had trusted above, someone she had confided in, someone who had guided her through doubts and fears, was the final piece of the puzzle. Their allegiance had been hidden, their motives obscured, their actions carefully calculated to lead her to this moment. It was her mother's aid, Sarah, a woman Elaine had thought was merely loyal, supportive, and steadfast. But now, the truth crystallized. Sarah had been working independently, feeding information, protecting Elaine when no one else could be trusted. She had waited for the precise moment to reveal herself, ensuring Elaine had the strength, knowledge, and courage to confront Robert Hart and survive. Sarah stepped closer, her eyes steady, unwavering. "Elaine, I've been with you from the beginning. Watching, protecting, guiding. I couldn't act openly until I was certain you were ready to face him." Elaine blinked rapidly, her voice raw. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because revealing myself too soon would have jeopardized everything," Sarah said softly. "You needed to grow into the truth yourself, to understand the choices, the risks, and the stakes. Only then could you fight with clarity." Elaine turned to Kane. His gaze met hers strong, relieved, proud. He gave her a small nod. She realized then that she had grown through every danger, every betrayal, every near-death moment. She was no longer the naive daughter desperate for answers. She was a force shaped by the truth and tempered by fire. Robert Hart, the architect of betrayal and manipulation, stood frozen. He had expected fear, hesitation, maybe even submission, but not Elaine's clarity, her newfound strength, her refusal to be intimidated. Elaine took a deliberate step forward, holding the ledger like a shield and a sword. "Robert Hart," she said, voice ringing with authority, "your control ends here. The ledger exposes everything. Every crime, every betrayal, every manipulation. Your power dies with your secrets." Robert's face hardened. "You think you've won? Even with the ledger, the empire isn't yours. The world doesn't bend to innocence or truth." Elaine's gaze did not waver. "No. The world bends to accountability, to justice. And I'm taking it one step at a time." Sarah moved beside Elaine, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You won't do it alone. We'll make sure the ledger reaches the right hands, Elaine. No more lies, no more shadows." Kane stepped forward, the cut on his shoulder still bleeding but his spirit unbroken. "You survived all of this because you believed in the truth, Elaine. And now, you're the one who decides what comes next." Robert's face twisted with rage. He realized his network, his control, his entire carefully constructed manipulation, had crumbled in the face of Elaine's courage, insight, and resolve. For the first time, he felt vulnerable, exposed. Elaine exhaled, the weight of weeks, months, years lifting slowly from her shoulders. The chaos, the deception, the betrayals, they were behind her now, not gone, but faced. Confronted. And survived. The aftermath was swift. Robert was taken into custody, his accomplices arrested or fleeing. The ledger was verified, its revelations made public in a controlled, responsible way that protected the innocent while exposing corruption. Kane remained a steadfast ally, his loyalty proven, his guidance invaluable. Sarah continued her quiet, steady support, now revealed as a guardian whose patience had been as vital as Elaine's courage. Days passed. Weeks. Elaine found herself in the now quiet Hart estate, the air no longer thick with tension, but filled with the soft hum of renewal. She walked the halls, tracing memories both joyful and painful, realizing that her world would never be the same, but neither would she. She found Kane in the library, reviewing documents with meticulous care. He looked up, smiled faintly. "It's strange, isn't it? After all that chaos, the silence feels almost wrong." Elaine laughed softly, the sound lighter than it had been in months. "It's not wrong. It's earned. And necessary. We've rebuilt from ruins. That's what matters. One site, 70. Kane's gaze softened. "You've changed, Elaine. Stronger, sharper, and yet, you still carry your father's spirit." Elaine's eyes glistened. "I carry more than that now. I carry the truth, and the responsibility to protect it. That's the difference." Sarah appeared quietly in the doorway, holding a cup of tea. "And remember," she said softly, "even when the world seems calm, the shadows are never fully gone. But you, Elaine, you now know how to face them." Elaine smiled faintly, accepting the cup, She realized then that her journey hadn't just been about uncovering secrets. It had been about discovering herself, the resilience, the courage, and the moral clarity she hadn't known she possessed. In the quiet of the estate, surrounded by allies she trusted and the remnants of truths finally laid bare, Elaine allowed herself to breathe. The storm had passed, the reckoning had ended, and the future, uncertain, fragile, and yet undeniably hers, awaited. She stood by the window, looking out at the city. The sun was rising, spilling gold across buildings that had once felt so distant, so dangerous. She felt the weight of every loss, every betrayal, every fear, but also the strength of every survival, every choice, every triumph. Her father's voice, faint in memory, whispered through her mind, "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the mastery of it." Elaine let the words settle. She was no longer a child chasing shadows. She was the keeper of truth, the protector of legacy, and the architect of her own destiny. And in that moment, she understood something profound. The world could break you, but how you rebuilt yourself defined everything. Kane approached, standing beside her. "What now?" he asked quietly. Elaine looked at him, then at the horizon. A soft smile curved her lips. "Now," she said, "we live. And we ensure no one else suffers the way we have. We've faced the darkness, and we came through it." Kane nodded. "Together?" Elaine glanced at him, then at Sarah, then back at the city bathed in sunrise. "Together," she said. The ledger rested on the table behind them, a tangible reminder of the past and a shield for the future. But for the first time, Elaine allowed herself to step forward, unburdened, resolute, free. The storm had ended, the world was quiet, but within that quiet was power, clarity, and hope. And Elaine Hart finally understood the truth her father had left behind, not just the secrets of legacy, but the secret of life itself, that courage, love, and integrity could survive even the darkest manipulations. The world may bend under lies, betrayals, and shadows, but those who rise from the ruins of truth define the dawn.